Welcome to EC Talk. We're so glad that you're joining us today. I'm your host, Suzanne Lynn, and the author today, very interesting. Sue Andrews waited 40 years to write a memoir. At the age of 62, she has valuable life information that she's going to share with us today that I think you're going to be able to apply very relevantly to your life. Sue, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanne. I waited until I was 62 to write the book, actually, and that's when I retired from 40 years of education. 30 of that was spent working with deaf children. So I know American Sign Language, and all the kids used American Sign Language to communicate. But when I retired, it was at my retirement that somebody says, well, what are you going to do for an encore? And I go, I'm going to write a book.
Oh,
And everybody thought, and they assumed it was going to be about education. And so when I told them it had nothing to do with education, they were all shocked and they wanted to know, well, what? And I said, well, it's going to be a memoir, so you're just going to have to wait.
exactly, exactly. No inside scoop there. Well, let's start off by talking about what the main message of the book is.
Well, the main message of the book is that women are stronger than they think they are. And I really want to encourage those who have ever been abused or in an abusive relationship to know that they can get out of whatever situation they are in. They just have to be resilient and have faith and trust that their gut feeling is the way to go. So I just wanted it to inspire other women that I know not all women have had happy parenting or good relationships when they were growing up, and I can't talk for them because I had a wonderful parental relationship with both my mother and father, and they were both encouraging. In fact, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have gotten through those tough times. But I wanted to let people know that I survived those tough times and they can too.
Sue, when you talk about abusive relationships, are you referring to physical, emotional, mental, or yes?
Well, all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, my first husband was very abusive, and we were only married 7 years. But the last 2 years, I went to Al-Anon because he got fit. It was mental at first, and I wasn't good enough, and I didn't do things right, and he drank a lot, and then started getting into drugs as well, and then that's when the physical abuse started. And
Mm.
he put me in different situations that he wasn't actually the perpetrator, but he put me in situations where I almost lost my life. Um,
Mm. Wow.
but it wasn't until, and when I was in Al-Anon, I kept asking, should I leave him? Should I leave him? And they kept telling us, we can't tell you, honey. You are the one who's going to have to make that decision. But when that loaded shotgun came out from underneath the bed, when I came back to get clothes to the girlfriend that I was hiding out at, because they always told me, find a place that he doesn't know. And I
Yeah.
was a teacher, and I had a teacher friend who said, oh, sure, you can come live with me for, temporarily, because we only had like a couple months left of school at the time.
Yeah.
But, and prior to that, he tried to punch me out. And luckily, when I saw that fist coming at my face, I ducked real fast, and he put a hole in the wall. And luckily, I mean, I survived that. I also survived when he had me, I fell out of a boat that we had and almost got killed when that 2-ton boat came between me and the pilings. And then another time we ran out of gas and we were walking on the highway to get gas, and a car hit me coming onto the freeway.
Oh,
And
Sue.
I mean, there was probably more, but we don't want to take all the time with all the different incidents that he put
Mhm.
my life in danger. So,
Wow. Can I just say, I am so, so sorry that you had to endure that. And I'm so proud of you for turning it into something that's going to help other women.
Well, I always knew when I was teaching. Well, I tried to forget it when I moved to California. I married my third husband, and I always has told him, I've always told him that, if I didn't have a good husband, I probably would have never written the book. But because I was
Mm.
loved and knew I was loved and had a good relationship, I said, God told me, and I knew in the back of my head that I went through that situation, all those situations for a reason. And the
Mm.
reason was to write a book to help others.
Yeah. Well, boy, this is like an onion and it's a gigantic onion. There's a lot to peel here. And I want to take a few steps back because what I'm hearing is that at a time you were in an abusive relationship, you were also a teacher.
Yes.
And my goodness, how did you go and be the rock and the light for those students when you were walking in such darkness yourself?
Well, let me tell you a story about the student situation. I was working in a portable. I wasn't working with special ed students at the time. I was working with hearing students. And before I got my master's in special ed. And we lived, I mean, the classroom was in the back of the school in a portable. Now, there was uh, a facility truck entryway that was a dirt path that could go all the way in the back where his you know, items were that he needed to work around the school. But my portable was right back there. And I told the principal, I said, can we get a lock on the front of that gate that's in the back that not, I mean, it was kind of surrounded by trees, not, the parents probably didn't even know it existed. But,
Mm.
and he had guns. And every day I went into that classroom thinking one day he's going to use that path, break into the classroom, kill me and the students too. And this was back in, when was it? It was in the 70s. I mean, you didn't hear about shootings in schools
No.
at that point in time, but
Mm.
that was what was in the back of my mind. I mean,
Right.
I'm getting chills right now thinking about it
Mm.
because when the principal said no, but, 10 years later or 30 years later, or 20 years later, I went back to that school and lo and behold, there was a gate then. In
Mm.
fact, you couldn't even get into the school without some type of a pass or something, but things were freer back then.
Yeah.
That was in the
Yeah.
70s and things were a lot freer.
You must really feel like God's hand of protection was on you.
Oh my gosh, so many times, so many times. In fact, um, that's actually this book. I'm going to write a sequel to this book, believe it or not. I've written two novels since that time, but my last book is going to be a sequel to that one because so many you hit the nail on the head when you said the veil of protection by God, because that's the only way I can explain it. I've been in so many situations and health wise as well, surviving 5 heart attacks and living to tell my story. And in my first book, And to Live and Love Again, there's only 2 heart attacks in there. One while I was driving on the freeway in LA, and the other one was at my mother's gravesite. And both times I was saved, and the last three also.
So I hear a story of your faith growing in all these hard times. Would you talk to me about that?
Sure. Yeah, my faith has always been with me ever since I was born. At When I was born with spina bifida, and most people don't know that about me unless I'm in a bathing suit at somebody's pool and they see the big scar on my back, which was right underneath the nape of my neck. So it was quite high. And in 1947, when I was born, there wasn't any neurosurgeons back then. It was just neurosurgery was in its infancy. I had a um, pediatric cardiac cardiologist, excuse me, it's a mouthful, that did the surgery on me when I was 9 days old.
Wow.
And my parents, I had to be transported to. I was born in the suburbs of Chicago. I was had to be transported down to Children's Hospital in the city of Chicago, where I stayed for 4 months before my parents could bring me home. And the
Wow.
reason for that is they had to remove this cyst, the tumor that was on my back, and had to regulate how much, because the tumor was holding the synovial fluid that goes to your brain. So
Mm,
that fluid was not going to my brain at all for 9 days until he operated. And then they had to wait and see if the tumor was going to grow or come back, I mean, or was the surgery a success?
mm,
And my mom said after that, after I was able to come home, my mom took me down. She wasn't driving at the time, and women didn't drive or didn't work, and so she had to take the bus to take me downtown. And she said every time she saw the doctor and he took the tape measure out of his medical jacket, she says she just had to hold her breath because they had
mm.
to measure my head. I could have been, I don't know what the technical terms are, but it's, is it, I'm trying to think of
Things
the,
could have gone very
but
badly.
yeah, yeah.
But so
I
you
mean,
feel God had his hand on
my
you.
head could have, excuse me, my head could have been too small or my head could have grown too big, and that was what the measurement was for. But
Mm,
as soon as I hit a certain number, whatever that was, he said, "Oh, she's making normal developments." In fact, one of the times in the hospital when I was there under their care, my mom and dad came in, and dad was outside and mom was sitting in the hallway and she was crying. And my father came out and said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, that nurse just said we're going to have to find one of those um, asylums for her because she'll be nothing but a vegetable the rest of her life." So my mom was very livid about that, and of course my dad tried to find the said, and then they never did find her again. I don't know what happened, but when I was toddling and I came, she'd always look for me when she came downtown because I had appointments until I was like 1 and normally fully normally developed, and she always looked for her, and she goes, she wanted to say, see this little girl that you wanted me to put away, because they had those places in them in that time. But and she made me start reading before I went to school, and I had a good life. I had a good supportive family. So what more can I say? And a faithful family too.
It sounds like your faith is generational, and
Hmm.
it was so important because of how you started off in life. Man, what a story you have to share. I'm so glad that you're doing that. I want to talk to you about the process of writing the book. How did you feel going into it? And did you discover anything new about yourself?
Well, the process was I had written several chapters. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never written a book before. My teacher friend says, "Oh, well, you have 2 master's degree. It's going to be easy." Well, no, it wasn't easy. Writing is not easy. And I remember sitting down at a pizza parlor with one of my writer friends, and I says, "How am I going to put these chapters together?" Because I had chapters I wanted to write. I wanted to write how supportive my parents were under different situations. Um, and he says, "Well, you know, you don't write with, well, when I was a baby," even though it's a memoir, you got to write with, start with the punch. What's the primary thing that happened to you and what you want to convey. And so, and it was the shotgun underneath the across the bed from me for sure. That was
Yet,
it. And then putting the other chapters together, I had because I didn't know what I was doing, never wrote anything other than theses before, um, and so I just dove into it. At my retirement party, one of my friends, one of my teacher friends, I had been a principal, and she gave me her card and she says, "This is the California Writers Club. I think you'd like to." And when she heard I was going to write a book, I said, "Why don't you come to a meeting?" So I went to the meeting and I learned a lot. I listened to all the speakers who came, and then I had one-to-one on those critique classes and books, and then I took online classes, and so they were the ones who helped me put the book together, and the
Mm.
critique group really was my rock because I every week I went to an evening class where other more proficient and expert writers and published writers went to this group. So what better way to learn how to write than to be with other authors? So that's how I did it.
I have to smile to hear the support system that you've had your whole life right at the right time. You had your family in the early years that you just glow about, and then you have friends when you were walking through really difficult times with your marriages, and then when it came to the difficult task of writing, God
Hmm.
provided exactly who you needed when you needed it.
Yes, yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
beautiful thing.
it took me a while though, and like I was alluding to when I was writing the book, um, besides learning the task of writing too, I did have a great husband at the time, and but then the reason why in fact, I read the phrase "to live and love again" in a magazine that had nothing to do with memoirs or anything like that, but just that phrase just jumped out at me. I says, "That's going to be the title of my book," because
Love
that's
that.
exactly what I've been doing my whole life. Other than, my teens, I wasn't sick at all through, I had a normal development my whole life. I excelled in school. And but then when my first two marriages, I was well, other than being mentally abused, and then physically abused. But then with my third husband, who was just as supportive as my parents were, for some reason, I just started getting health issues.
Mm.
And I had my first heart attack at age 55. I thought I was young at the time, but then I got involved through another heart patient with the Women Heart Organization, and they have a leadership program that is held every fall. And she says, "I think you'd be a good candidate for that." And I had just survived the heart attack that I had, the emergency open heart surgery from my first heart attack on the freeway. And so I contacted this. It's the leadership symposium that they have for heart patients. It doesn't matter whether you've had a heart attack or a heart transplant or whatever issue you've had with your heart. And so it's kind of like um, an organization that works like the American Heart Association, only this is strictly for women because
Okay.
heart attacks or heart disease is the number one killer. A lot of women, even still today, think that it's cancer, and it's not. Though cancer gets a lot more advertising and a lot more, well, it's a disfiguring, um, and that's another thing that I think there's more condition, more um, focus on that because it's disfiguring. But
Mhm.
with my experience, and at the time that I went, I had only had the one, and I've had four ever since. But the heart attack, going to that symposium taught me a lot about the heart, and I really learned a lot. And then you have to sign a contract that says you're going to do so many hours of community service. Well, now it's been 23, yeah, 23 years later since that first heart attack, and I still do speaking engagements on that for women.
It's amazing.
I'm not
You,
sure if I answered your question. I kind
no,
of,
you did. You did. I want to go back because there was a little seed that you planted that struck a chord of interest. It took you a while, you said, to write the book. How long did it take you, and what took so long? Because you have tremendous experience to share, and it sounds like you were excited.
Well, with the first book, it wasn't, I had already had my first heart attack. In fact, my mother and father lived with me when that happened. And I was taking care of them. My mom was in Florida, and well, I lived in Florida before California, and my parents, it's funny, my dad said to me, well, we followed you to Florida from Illinois. We're not going to follow you again. Well, then they had to because of the fact that my his health was deteriorating, and mom had to come, and I said, well, come live with us. In fact, my husband even put a second story on our house so they
Wow.
could live downstairs and we would be upstairs.
Yeah.
And so during that course of caregiving, which is very stressful on the heart, um, a lot of changes had to be made. And I told my mom that, you know, I used to go every Saturday and Sunday with her to the nursing home when dad went in the nursing home. But I said, I can only go one time now until, and that's what I did till he passed away. But then when she passed away, that was near the end of my to live and love again. And I just had to stop. In fact, that was when my second heart attack happened at her gravesite. I mean, my mother was like a sister to me. And that was the weird thing, Suzanne, is that it wasn't anything like the first heart attack. It was totally different. In fact, when I thought about it later, I thought maybe I was really having a stroke because what happened, I was saying the eulogy, and at the end, I was feeling lightheaded and like I was getting a really bad headache. And I don't get headaches normally. That was something totally out of the ordinary. So after it was just, and my brother wanted it to be small, and so it was just, and my husband stayed at home to take care of our dog, and so it was just myself, my brother, his wife, the pastor, and that was it. That was just but as soon as everybody was done talking, in fact, I remember feeling this way. The minister had second words to say, and I said, I kept saying to mine, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Something's going on. And when we got to, luckily, the gravesite was very close to the funeral home, so we could just walk there. And by the time we walked in, I told my sister-in-law, I said, because I was supposed to drive to the airport right from there to fly back home. And so so I told my sister-in-law, get my blood pressure cuff. I want to see what's going on. So she came in with the blood pressure cuff. The lady who was in charge of our service saw what was going on in the lobby, and she says, are you okay? And I says, well, my blood pressure says I am, but I don't think I am. So she says, come to my office. I says, well, where's your office? Oh, it's downstairs. I said, I could never walk downstairs. So she gets a wheelchair, takes me downstairs. Then the head of the funeral home comes down and says, we're calling 911 right now. And so when I got in that ambulance, and the gravesite was in the same town as where I was born. And when the guy on the speaker says, we're going to Elmhurst Memorial Hospital, you know what I was thinking?
Wow.
Circle of life. This
Circle of
is
life.
where I was
Yes.
born, and this is
That's
where
where
I'm
you're
going
gonna
to
die.
die.
Wow. You know, I have to say this, the thing that came to mind, and it made me cry. I actually had to wipe tears away when you were talking about having the heart attack at her eulogy. I wonder if you had a broken heart.
Well, you know what? That's exactly what the cardiologist said. He
Yeah.
said, I think just as he was leaving the room after he told me, well, if you lived here, you would go home tomorrow because they had to put, they had to put a stent in
Yeah.
and at that point in time. And but because you have to take a flight to California, you're staying here a week. So I called my husband. He wanted to know if wanted him to be there. I says, no, I'm in good hands, and so as the doctor was leaving the room and after one of the visits, he says, I think you have Takotsubo syndrome. And I'd never heard of Takotsubo syndrome. So when the nurse came in shortly after that. I said, the doctor says he thinks I have Takasuku syndrome. What is that? And that's what she says. Well, the common word is broken heart syndrome. And I said, okay, that makes sense. Because I mean, like I said, my mom was the sister I never had. And
Mhm.
but anyway, as time went on, during those 5 heart attacks, that's what I was thinking all along, that that's what I had. But I was actually misdiagnosed, and it wasn't until after the fourth heart attack, when I was in the hospital with COVID during COVID time, my the primary cardiologist that I had had for like 13 years had just retired, and I had gotten somebody else in his group there, and he'd been taking care of me for a couple years. But anyway, I'm in there and he says, "Well, Mrs. Andrews," and this is when I had a mask on, he had a mask on, and I heard the words, "I think because we can't see anything in your chart and these tests that we've given you, I think you need anti-anxiety pills." That's another thing I want people to know, that a lot of cardiologists will tell a woman she's anxious or she needs anxiety pills when it's really her heart all along. And anyway, I just said okay under my mask, just cavalier. And but in my mind, I said to myself, those are the last words I'm going to hear out of your mouth, because I'm never coming. You're too lazy to figure out, well, I'm not having heart attacks because I'm not an anxious person.
Mhm.
So I did finally find a new cardiologist who got down to the bottom of it. I says, why am I having all these heart attacks? It's not that I'm broke. I was brokenhearted at my mom's gravesite, but not at all the other places. And so he got to the bottom of it, and believe it or not, it was a hereditary condition that I didn't even know I had. My mother and father did not die of heart attacks. They died of old age in nursing homes.
Wow. So, what a story. And I can't believe 25 minutes has gone by already. We've got to start to bring this interview down. But I want to give you the final thought of what is it that you hope someone who reads this takes away?
Well, like I was saying, I started my book, and I looked at it again, and I said, in the back of my book, I wrote, I could have been the poster child for spina bifida. I
Mm.
could have been the poster child for bullied, because I was bullied in school because I was chunky and fat. I could be the poster child for abused women. I could be the poster child for women with heart disease, and now a child of a parent with Alzheimer's. Or I was a parent of, I mean, a child of my mother had Alzheimer's, but now I we think my husband has it too. So anyway, but don't let anybody or any title define you, and know God that um, has you under all these situations like I've been under, for you to tell your story to help others. That's what I want people to get from my story, and they will get even more of it when I write my next sequel to Live and Live Again.
Sue, thank you so much for your amazing strength. I have not met many people with the emotional strength that you have and the spiritual strength that you have. So, to live and love again, please consider purchasing this book. Read it. Give Sue ratings on Amazon or wherever you're purchasing it. And Sue, thank you for sharing your strength and your love with the world. I'm glad that you've done that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Loved being here. Have a good day.
Have a great day.
Blessed day. Bye.